Kanban boards are one of the best ways to make work visible and solve the problem of no one has any visibility into what teams are doing. I'm going to step you through 3 different versions of a Kanban board to show you how you can get the most information and the most value out of using this technique. So I'm going to start off with the most basic type of Kanban board. Now, this one has 3 states or 3 columns that our work items are going to move through. We have our to-do column. This is just all of the work that we're planning to do. We have an in-progress column when that work moves into our workflow, and then we have a done column. Now, the example that I'm going to use for all of these Kanban boards is where a delivery team would be using a time-boxed approach, whether it's a sprint or an iteration. Duration is going to be 2 weeks. And in this type of an approach, the very first thing we would be doing when we start that new time box is to go through a planning event. So coming out of sprint planning or iteration planning, the team committed to doing these 9 work items. There are 8 user stories and 1 technical story. So now we wouldn't see all this work moving in progress all at once. And if we did, that would be a red flag. That would be an indicator we probably need to take a look at the process that's being used. What we should see is that the team members looking at the work to be done would start to pull it into the workflow. So we would see, right, this user story pulled in progress. We might see another user story pulled into in progress. And all of the value-adding activities, everything from analysis and design to creating test assets, to writing code, to validating that the acceptance criteria has been met and the definition of done has been reached, would occur, and then we would move from in progress to our done column. Right? So we would see just kind of a flow of work, right? That's the great thing about Kanban boards. At any moment in time, we can see how much work we still have to do, what work is in progress, and what work has been completed. This is a very basic board. So next, I'm going to move on to the typical Kanban board that I see teams use. So we've got our to-do column. I've got the same 9 stories in it. We've got our done columns, no changes there. The changes in the middle, instead of having 1 state, 1 column for in progress, now what I've got is I've got in dev, in QA, and in acceptance. So this is going to provide us more insight into the work in progress, right? So we would see, again, our team members would be pulling work into the first state, right, in development. And when it's ready for testing, it would be moved into in QA. And so we would see something that, again, kind of looks a little bit like this, right? We got lots of activity going on, and then things would be making their way across into our done column. So this shows us more, right? We can see where we've got our development activities, we've got our testing activities, and then we have our acceptance activities. Very common setup. But it doesn't show you how long work is waiting in between the value-adding activities. Right? It doesn't show as easily when work goes backwards, right? So each one of these states is a handoff. We're going from in development and handing it off to in QA and then handing it off to in acceptance. Now, if there is a bug, a defect that's found, the work is going to go back, right? It's going to go backward. So we want to be able to see not only our value adding time, but how long work is waiting, because that can give us a lot of insight into some impediments, some constrictions in our flow of delivering value. So this last board is based on my recommended approach. So I've got the same to-do column and the same done column. I have pretty much the same, although I've tweaked the naming of the columns a little bit. So the blue underlines in-process development, in-process QA, and in-process acceptance are where we've got that touch time, that value-adding activity time. And then in between those columns, I've got columns for waiting for development, waiting for QA, and waiting for acceptance. These are holding queues. And by just adding these columns, we're able to see a lot more information and get a lot more insight into what's unfolding with respect to our ability, our flow to get work done. So I'm going to pull the stories right into the workflow like I did on the other two boards. Now it would go from to do to in process, right? I'll come back and show what waiting for development is. But we would have our in process work. So one of the things here, another recommendation, and in the next article I'm going to be covering are some explicit agreements. The types of tasks that we'd want to see done when it's in process development would not only be the analysis and design, and again, writing code if we're talking about a digital product, again, we're writing code for software. We would also want to see whatever testing assets need to be created. We'd want to see our test cases identified, test scripts written, test data either identified or created, so that as this story moves into this holding queue, right, we know as it gets into in process, we're just ready to actually execute those tests. So we would see then when we're ready to do that, and we would see sort of a progression like this, right? We'd have work that's in process development, get some testing, waiting for acceptance. I just kind of move a few of these things around to kind of show what a flow would kind of look like. So why is that important? Why is it important to be able to see these waiting states? Well, one of the things is that is a delay, right? We have a handoff and we have a certain period of time. And if that time is a few hours, a few days, a week, that's more than likely indicating that we've got a problem with our flow, right? It could mean that we have too much work in progress. It could mean that we've got some team members that don't have the adequate skills and experience. It could be a whole number of things that is causing work to be waiting, even within a short time period like 2 weeks. Now, the other thing it's going to do is it's going to show us, again, if we've got something that looks like this, we've got a lot of these stories, we're just going to kind of move these around. And, well, by looking at this visual information, the expectation is testing is going on, right? We've got QA work that is being done to make sure that whatever code was written, right, passes these tests so that we can then ask our product owner or have the product owner delegate somebody that is going to verify that the acceptance criteria has been met. But that would be a very wrong assumption if only one of these stories is actually being worked on, from a QA perspective. And we have 3 stories that are waiting, right? Without having a holding queue, a waiting column, it's near impossible to know that. The other thing that this helps with is if we have a bug or a defect that is found, for example. So we had, went from in-process development, waiting for QA, it's in QA, bug is found. Well, now this goes back to waiting for development, right? Because the team members or the team member that might need to address the bug that has been found is more than likely going to be working on something else. So they're going to stop that work and now go back to the story that the bug was found or finish the work that they're doing and then pull that into the workflow. So that's something else, just one more of the pieces of information that really helps us understand how much work is moving forward, how much work is moving backward, and the work that's moving backward, how long is it sitting there and waiting? So that's just some of what we're able to have additional insight into when we're visualizing our work with Kanban boards. And then we've got states in our workflow for both that value-adding touch time as well as a holding queue for the waiting time and understanding the delays that we're encountering.